The Greenies. A rose tree stood in the window, but a little while ago it had been green and fresh, and now it looked sickly. It was in poor health, no doubt. A whole regiment was quartered on it and was eating it up. Yet, notwithstanding this seeming greediness, the regiment was a very decent and respectable one.
It wore bright green uniforms. I spoke to one of the Greenies. He was but 3 days old, and yet he was already a grandfather. What do you think he said? It is all true. He spoke of himself and of the rest of the regiment. Listen.
We are the most wonderful creatures in the world. At a very early age, we are engaged, and immediately we have the wedding. When the cold weather comes, we lay our eggs, but the little ones lie sunny and warm. The wisest of the creatures, the ant, we have the greatest respect for him, understands us well.
He appreciates us, you may be sure. He does not eat us up at once. He takes our eggs, lays them in the family anthill on the ground floor, lays them labeled and numbered, side by side, layer on layer, so that each day a new one may creep out of the egg.
Then he puts us in a stable, benches our hind legs, and milks us till we die. He has given us the prettiest of names, Little Milch Cow.
All creatures who, like the ant, are gifted with common sense call us by this pretty name. It is only human beings who do not. They give us another name, one that we feel to be a great affront, great enough to embitter our whole life.
Could you not write a protest against it for us? Could you not rouse these human beings to a sense of the wrong they do us? They look at us so stupidly, or at times with such envious eyes, just because we eat a rose leaf, while they themselves eat every created thing, whatever grows and is green.
And oh, they give us the most humiliating of names. I will not even mention it. Ugh, I feel it to my very stomach. I cannot even pronounce it, at least not when I have my uniform on, and that I always wear.
I was born on a rose leaf. I and all the regiment live on the rose tree. We live off it, in fact. But then it lives again in us, who belong to the higher order of created beings. The human beings do not like us. They pursue and murder us with soap suds. Oh, it is a horrid drink. I seem to smell it even now. You cannot think how dreadful it is to be washed when one was not made to be washed. Men, you who look at us with your severe, soap-sud eyes, think a moment what our place in nature is. We are born upon the roses. We die in roses. Our whole life is a rose poem. Do not, I beg you, give us a name which you yourselves think so despicable, the name I cannot bear to pronounce.
If you wish to speak of us, call us the Ants' Milch Cows, the Rose Tree Regiment, the Little Green Things. And I, the man, stood looking at the tree and at the little greenies, whose name I shall not mention, for I should not like to wound the feelings of the citizens of the rose tree, a large family with eggs and young ones. And I looked at the soap suds I was going to wash them in, for I too had come with soap and water and murderous intentions. But now I will use it for soap bubbles. Look how beautiful! Perhaps there lies in each a fairy tale, and the bubble grows large and radiant, and looks as if there were a pearl lying inside it.
The bubble swayed and swung. It flew to the door, and then burst. But the door opened wide,
And there stood Dame Fairy Tale herself. And now she will tell you better than I can about, I will not say the name, the little green things of the rose bush.
"Plant lice," said Dame Fairy Tale. "One must call things by their right names, and if one may not do so always, one must at least have the privilege of doing so in a fairy tale."
The Little Match Girl. It was dreadfully cold. It was snowing fast and was almost dark, as evening came on the last evening of the year. In the cold and the darkness, there went along the street a poor little girl, bareheaded and with naked feet. When she left home, she had slippers on, it is true, but they were much too large for her feet slippers that her mother had used till then, and the poor little girl lost them in running across the street when two carriages were passing terribly fast. When she looked for them, one was not to be found, and a boy seized the other and ran away with it, saying he would use it for a cradle some day when he had children of his own. So on the little girl went with her bare feet, that were red and blue with cold. In an old apron that she wore were bundles of matches, and she carried a bundle also in her hand. No one had bought so much as a bunch all the long day, and no one had given her even a penny. Poor little girl. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along, a perfect picture of misery. The snowflakes fell on her long flaxen hair, which hung in pretty curls about her throat. But she thought not of her beauty, nor of the cold. Lights gleamed in every window, and there came to her the savory smell of roast goose, for it was New Year's Eve. And it was this of which she thought. In a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected beyond the other, she sat cowering down. She had drawn under her little feet, but still she grew colder and colder, yet she dared not go home, for she had sold no matches, and could not bring a penny of money. Her father would certainly beat her, and besides, it was cold enough at home, for they had only the house roof above them, and though the largest holes had been stopped with straw and rags, there were left many through which the cold wind could whistle. And now her little hands were nearly frozen with cold. Alas! A single match might do her good if she might only draw it from the bundle, rub it against the wall, and warm her fingers by it. So at last she drew one out. Whisht! How it blazed and burned! It gave out a warm, bright flame like a little candle as she held her hands over it. A wonderful little light it was. It really seemed to the little girl as if she sat before a great iron stove with polished brass feet and brass shovel and tongs. So blessedly it burned that the little maiden stretched out her feet to warm them also. How comfortable she was! But lo, the flame went out, the stove vanished, and nothing remained but the little burned match in her hand. She rubbed another match against the wall. It burned brightly, and where the light fell upon the wall, it became transparent like a veil, so that she could see through it into the room. A snow-white cloth was spread upon the table, on which was a beautiful china dinner service, while a roast goose, stuffed with apples and prunes, steamed famously and sent forth a most savory smell. And what was more delightful still, and wonderful, the goose jumped from the dish, with knife and fork still in its breast, and waddled along the floor straight to the little girl. But the match went out then, and nothing was left to her but the thick, damp wall. She lighted another match, and now she was under a most beautiful Christmas tree, larger and far more prettily trimmed than the one she had seen through the glass doors at the rich merchants'. Hundreds of wax tapers were burning on the green branches, and gay figures, such as she had seen in shop windows, looked down upon her. The child stretched out her hands to them, then the match went out. Still the lights of the Christmas tree rose higher and higher. She saw them now as stars in heaven, and one of them fell, forming a long trail of fire. "Now someone is dying," murmured the child softly. For her grandmother, the only person who had loved her, and who was now dead, had told her that whenever a star falls, a soul mounts up to God. She struck yet another match against the wall, and again it was light, and in the brightness there appeared before her the dear old grandmother, bright and radiant, yet sweet and mild, and happy as she had never looked on earth. "Oh, grandmother," cried the child, "take me with you. I know you will go away when the match burns out. You too will vanish, like the warm stove, the splendid New Year's feast, the beautiful Christmas tree." And lest her grandmother should disappear, she rubbed the whole bundle of matches against the wall. And the matches burned with such a brilliant light that it became brighter than noonday. Her grandmother had never looked so grand and beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and both flew together, joyously and gloriously, mounting higher and higher, far above the earth. And for them there was neither hunger, nor cold, nor care. They were with God. But in the corner, at the dawn of day, sat the poor girl, leaning against the wall, with red cheeks and smiling mouth, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. Stiff and cold she sat with the matches, one bundle of which was burned. She wanted to warm herself, poor little thing, people said. No one imagined what sweet visions she had had, or how gloriously she had gone with her grandmother to enter upon the joys of a new year.
The Money Box. In a nursery where a number of toys lay scattered about, a money box stood on the top of a very high wardrobe. It was made of clay in the shape of a pig and had been bought of the potter. In the back of the pig was a slit, and this slit had been enlarged with a knife so that dollars or even crown pieces might slip through. And indeed, there were 2 in the box, besides a number of pence. The money pig was stuffed so full that it could no longer rattle, which is the highest state of perfectness to which a money pig can attain. There he stood upon the cupboard, high and lofty, looking down upon everything else in the room. He knew very well that he had enough inside himself to buy up all the other toys, and this gave him a very good opinion of his own value. The rest thought of this fact also, although they did not express it. There were so many other things to talk about. A large doll, still handsome, though rather old, for her neck had been mended, lay inside one of the drawers, which was partly open. She called out to the others, "Let us have a game at being men and women. That is something worth playing at." Upon this there was a great uproar. Even the engravings which hung in frames on the wall turned round in their excitement and showed that they had a wrong side to them, although they had not the least intention of exposing themselves in this way or of objecting to the game. It was late at night, but as the moon shone through the windows, they had light at a cheap rate. And as the game was now to begin, all were invited to take part in it, even the children's wagon, which certainly belonged among the coarser playthings. "Each has its own value," said the wagon. "We cannot all be noblemen. There must be some to do the work." The money pig was the only one who received a written invitation. He stood so high that they were afraid he would not accept a verbal message. But in his reply, he said if he had to take a part, he must enjoy the sport from his own home. They were to arrange for him to do so, and so they did. The little toy theater was therefore put up in such a way that the money pig could look directly into it. Some wanted to begin with a comedy and afterwards to have a tea party and a discussion for mental improvement, but they began with the latter first. The rocking horse spoke of training and races, the wagon of railways and steam power, for these subjects belonged to each of their professions, and it was right they should talk of them. The clock talked politics, tick, tick. He professed to know what was the time of the day, but there was a whisper that he did not go correctly. The bamboo cane stood by, looking stiff and proud. He was vain of his brass ferrule and silver top. And on the sofa lay 2 worked cushions, pretty but stupid. When the play at the little theater began, the rest sat and looked on. They were requested to applaud and stamp or crack whenever they felt gratified with what they saw. The riding whip said he never cracked for old people, only for the young, those who were not yet married. "I crack for everybody," said the nutcracker. "Yes, and a fine noise you make," thought the audience as the play went on. It was not worth much, but it was very well played, and all the actors turned their painted sides to the audience, for they were made to be seen only on one side. The acting was wonderful, excepting that sometimes the actors came out beyond the lamps because the wires were a little too long. The doll whose neck had been mended was so excited that the place in her neck burst, and the money pig declared he must do something for one of the players, as they had all pleased him so much. So he made up his mind to mention one of them in his will as the one to be buried with him in the family vault whenever that event should happen. They enjoyed the comedy so much that they gave up all thoughts of the tea party and only carried out their idea of intellectual amusement, which they called playing at men and women. And there was nothing wrong about it, for it was only play. All the while, each one thought most of himself or of what the money pig could be thinking. The money pig's thoughts were on, as he supposed, a very far distant time, of making his will and of his burial, and of when it might all come to pass. Certainly sooner than he expected, for all at once down he came from the top of the press, fell on the floor, and was broken into pieces. Then all the pennies hopped and danced about in the most amusing manner. The little ones twirled round like tops, and the large ones rolled away as far as they could, especially the one great silver crown piece, who had often wanted to go out into the world. And he had his wish as well as all the rest of the money. The pieces of the money pig were thrown into the dustbin, and the next day there stood a new money pig on the cupboard. But it had not a farthing inside it yet, and therefore, like the old one, could not rattle. This was the beginning with him, and with us it shall be the end of our story.
The Loving Pair. A whipping top and a ball lay close together in a drawer among other playthings. One day the top said to the ball, "Since we are living so much together, why should we not be lovers?" But the ball, being made of Morocco leather, thought herself a very high-bred lady and would hear nothing of such a proposal. On the next day, the little boy to whom the playthings belonged came to the draw. He painted the top red and yellow and drove a bright brass nails right through the head of it. It looked very smart indeed as it spun around after that. "Look at me," said he to the ball. "What do you say to me now? Why should we not make a match of it and become man and wife? We suit each other so well. You can jump and I can dance. There would not be a happier pair in the whole world." "Do you think so?" said the ball. "Perhaps you do not know that my father and mother were Morocco slippers and that I have a Spanish cork in my body?" "Yes, but then "I am made of mahogany," said the top. "The mayor himself turned me. He has a turning lathe of his own, and he took great pleasure in making me." Can I trust you in this?" asked the ball. "May I never be whipped again if what I tell you is not true," returned the top. "You plead your cause well," said the ball, "but I am not free to listen to your proposal. I am as good as engaged to a swallow. As often as I fly up into the air, he puts his head out of his nest and says, 'Will you?' In my heart, I have said yes to him, and that is almost the same as an engagement. But I'll promise never to forget you." "A deal of good that will do me," said the top, and they left off speaking to each other. Next day, the ball was taken out. The top saw it fly like a bird into the air, so high that it passed quite out of sight. It came back again, but each time that it touched the earth, it sprang higher than before. This must have been either from its longing to mount higher like the swallow, or because it had the Spanish cork in its body. On the 9th time, the little ball did not return. The boy sought and sought, but all in vain, for it was gone. "I know very well where she is," sighed the top. "She is in the swallow's nest, celebrating her wedding." The more the top thought of this, the more lovely the ball became to him. That she could not be his bride seemed to make his love for her the greater. She had preferred another rather than himself, but he could not forget her. He twirled round and round, spinning and humming, but always thinking of the ball, who grew more and more beautiful the more he thought of her. And thus several years passed. It came to be an old love, and now the top was no longer young. One day he was gilded all over. Never in his life had he been half so handsome. He was now a golden top, and bravely he spun, humming all the time. But once he sprang too high and was gone. They looked everywhere for him, even in the cellar, but he was nowhere to be found. Where was he? He had jumped into the dustbin and lay among cabbage stalks, sweepings, dust, and all sorts of rubbish that had fallen from the gutter and the roof.
"Alas, my gay gilding will soon be spoiled here. What sort of trumpery can I have got among?" And then he peeped at a long cabbage stalk which lay much too near him, and at something strange and round, which appeared like an apple, but was not. It was an old ball that must have lain for years in the gutter and been soaked through and through with water.
"Thank goodness, at last I see an equal, one of my own sort, with whom I can talk," said the ball, looking earnestly at the gilded top. "I am myself made of real Morocco, sewed together by a young lady's hands, and within my body is a Spanish cork, though no one would think it now.
I was very near marrying the swallow, when by a sad chance I fell into the gutter on the roof. I have lain there 5 years, and I am now wet through and through. You may think what a wearisome situation it has been for a young lady like me."
The top made no reply. The more he thought of his old love, and the more he heard, the more sure he became that this was indeed she. Then came the housemaid to empty the dustbin. "Hello," she cried. "Why, here's the gilt top." And so the top was brought again to the playroom, to be used and honored as before, while nothing was again heard of the ball. And the top never spoke again of his old love. The feeling must have passed away. And it is not strange when the object of it has lain 5 years in a gutter and been drenched through and through, and when one meets her again in a dustbin.
Sunshine Stories. I am going to tell a story said the wind. "I beg your pardon," said the rain, "but now it is my turn. Have you not been howling round the corner this long time, as hard as ever you could? Is this the gratitude you owe me?" said the wind. "I, who in honor of you turn inside out, yes, even break all the umbrellas when the people won't have anything to do with you. I will speak myself," said the sunshine. Silence, and the sunshine said it with such glory and majesty that the weary wind fell prostrate, and the rain, beating against him, shook him, as she said, "We won't stand it. She is always breaking through, is Madam Sunshine. Let us not listen to her. What she has to say is not worth hearing." And still the sunshine began to talk, and this is what she said. A beautiful swan flew over the rolling, tossing waves of the ocean. Every one of its feathers shone like gold, and one feather drifted down to the great merchant vessel that, with sails all set, was sailing away. The feather fell upon the light curly hair of a young man, whose business it was to care for the goods in the ship, the supercargo he was called. The feather of the bird of fortune touched his forehead, became a pen in his hand, and brought him such luck that he soon became a wealthy merchant, rich enough to have bought for himself spurs of gold, rich enough to change a golden plate into a nobleman's shield, on which, said the sunshine, I shone. The swan flew farther, away and away, over the sunny green meadow, where the little shepherd boy, only 7 years old, had lain down in the shade of the old tree, the only one there was in sight. In its flight, the swan kissed one of the leaves of the tree, and falling into the boy's hand, it was changed to 3 leaves to tend to a whole book. Yes, and in the book he read about all the wonders of nature, about his native language, about faith and knowledge. At night he laid the book under his pillow, that he might not forget what he had been reading. The wonderful book led him also to the schoolroom, and thence everywhere, in search of knowledge. I have read his name among the names of learned men, said the sunshine. The swan flew into the quiet, lonely forest, and rested a while on the deep, dark lake where the lilies grow, where the wild apples are to be found on the shore, where the cuckoo and the wild pigeon have their homes. In the wood was a poor woman gathering firewood branches and dry sticks that had fallen. She bore them on her back in a bundle, and in her arms she held her little child. She too saw the golden swan, the bird of fortune, as it rose from among the reeds on the shore. What was it that glittered so? A golden egg that was still quite warm. She laid it in her bosom, and the warmth remained. Surely there was life in the egg. She heard the gentle pecking inside the shell, but she thought it was her own heart that was beating. At home in her poor cottage she took out the egg. Tick, tick, it said, as if it had been a gold watch, but it was not. It was an egg, a real, living egg. The egg cracked and opened, and a dear little baby swan, all feathered as with the purest gold, pushed out its tiny head. Around its neck were 4 rings, and as this woman had 4 boys, 3 at home, and this little one that was with her in the lonely wood, she understood at once that there was one for each boy. Just as she had taken them, the little gold bird took flight. She kissed each ring, then made each of the children kiss one of the rings, laid it next the child's heart a while, then put it on his finger. I saw it all, said the sunshine, and I saw what happened afterward. One of the boys, while playing by a ditch, took a lump of clay in his hand, then turned and twisted it till it took shape and was like Jason, who went in search of the golden fleece and found it. The second boy ran out upon the meadow, where stood the flowers of all imaginable colors. He gathered a handful and squeezed them so tightly that the juice flew into his eyes, and some of it wet the ring upon his hand. It cribbled and crawled in his brain and in his hands, and after many a day and many a year, people in the great city talked of the famous painter that he was. The third child held the ring in his teeth, and so tightly that it gave forth sound the echo of a song in the depth of his heart. Then thoughts and feelings rose in beautiful sounds, rose like singing swans, plunged, too, like swans, into the deep, deep sea. He became a great musical composer, a master, of whom every country has the right to say, he was mine, for he was the world's. And the 4th little one, yes, he was the ugly duck of the family. They said he had the pip and must eat pepper and butter like a sick chicken, and that was what was given him. But of me he got a warm, sunny kiss, said the sunshine. He had 10 kisses for one. He was a poet and was first kissed, then buffeted all his life through. But he held what no one could take from him, the ring of fortune from Dame Fortune's golden swan. His thoughts took wing and flew up and away like singing butterflies, emblems of an immortal life. That was a dreadfully long story, said the wind. And so stupid and tiresome, said the rain. Blow upon me, please, that I may revive a little. And while the wind blew, the sunshine said, the swan of fortune flew over the lovely bay where the fishermen had set their nets. The very poorest one among them was wishing to marry, and marry he did. To him the swan brought a piece of amber. Amber draws things toward itself, and this piece drew hearts to the house where the fisherman lived with his bride. Amber is the most wonderful of incense, and there came a soft perfume, as from a holy place, a sweet breath from beautiful nature that God has made. And the fisherman and his wife were happy and grateful in their peaceful home, content even in their poverty, and so their life became a real sunshine story. I think we had better stop now, said the wind. I am dreadfully bored. The sunshine has talked long enough. I think so too, said the rain. And what do we others who have heard the story say? We say, now the story's done.
The Darning Needle. There was once a darning needle who thought herself so fine that she came at last to believe that she was fit for embroidery. Mind now that you hold me fast, she said to the fingers that took her up. Pray don't lose me. If I should fall on the ground, I should certainly be lost. I am so fine. That's more than you can tell, said the fingers as they grasped her tightly by the waist. I come with a train, you see, said the darning needle as she drew her long thread after her, but there was no knot in the thread. The fingers pressed the point of the needle upon an old pair of slippers in which the upper leather had burst and must be sewed together. The slippers belonged to the cook. This is very coarse work, said the darning needle. I shall never get through alive. There, I'm breaking. And break she did. Did I not say so? Said the darning needle. I'm too delicate for such work as that. Now it's quite useless for sewing, said the fingers. But they still held her all the same, for the cook presently dropped some melted sealing wax upon the needle, and then pinned her neckerchief in front with it. May I take the liberty to ask if you are made of gold? She asked of the pin, her neighbor. You have a splendid appearance and quite a remarkable head, though it is so little. You should do what you can to grow. Of course, it is not everyone that can have sealing wax dropped upon her. And the darning needle drew herself up so proudly that she fell out of the neckerchief into the sink, which the cook was at that moment rinsing. Now I'm going to travel, said the darning needle. If only I don't get lost. But that was just what happened to her. I'm too delicate for this world, she said, as she found herself in the gutter. But I know who I am, and there is always some little pleasure in that. It was thus that the darning needle kept up her proud bearing and lost none of her good humor. And now all sorts of things swam over her, chips and straws and scraps of old newspapers. Only see how they sail along, said the darning needle to herself. They little know what is under them, though it is I, and I sit firmly here. See, there goes a chip. It thinks of nothing in the world but itself, of nothing in the world but a chip. There floats a straw. See how it turns and twirls about. Do think of something besides yourself, or you may easily run against a stone. There swims a bit of a newspaper. What's written upon it is forgotten long ago, yet how it spreads itself out and gives itself airs. I said patiently and quietly here, I know what I am, and I shall remain the same, always. One day, There lay something beside her that glittered splendidly. She thought it must be a diamond, but it was really only a bit of broken glass from a bottle. As it shone so brightly, the darning needle spoke to it, introducing herself as a breastpin. "You are a diamond, I suppose," she said. "Why, yes, something of the sort." So each believed the other to be some rare and costly trinket, and they began to converse together upon the world, saying how very conceited it was. "Yes," said the darning needle, "I have lived in a young lady's box, and the young lady happened to be a cook. She had 5 fingers upon each of her hands, and anything more conceited and arrogant than those 5 fingers I never saw. And yet they were only there that they might take me out of the box or put me back again." "Were they of high descent?" asked the bit of bottle. "Did they shine?" "No, indeed," replied the darning needle, "but they were none the less haughty. There were 5 brothers of them, all of the finger family, and they held themselves so proudly side by side, though they were of quite different heights. The outermost, Thumbling he was called, was short and thick-set. He generally stood out of the rank, a little in front of the others. He had only 1 joint in his back, and could only bow once. But he used to say that if he were cut off from a man, that man would be cut off from military service. Foreman the second put himself forward on all occasions, meddled with sweet and sour, pointed to sun and moon, and when the fingers wrote, it was he who pressed the pen. Middleman, the third of the brothers, could look over the others' heads and gave himself airs for that. Ringman the fourth went about with a gold belt about his waist, and little Playman, whom they called Peter Spielman, did nothing at all, and was proud of that, I suppose. There was nothing to be heard but boasting, and that is why I took myself away. And now we sit here together and shine," said the bit of bottle. At that very moment some water came rushing along the gutter, so that it overflowed and carried the glass diamond along with it. "So he is off," said the darning needle, "and I still remain. I am left here because I am too slender and genteel, but that's my pride, and pride is honorable." And proudly she sat, thinking many thoughts. "I could almost believe I had been born of a sunbeam. I'm so fine. It seems as if the sunbeams were always trying to seek me under the water. Alas, I'm so delicate that even my own mother cannot find me. If I had my old eye still, which broke off, I think I should cry. But no, I would not. It's not genteel to weep." One day, a couple of street boys were paddling about in the gutter, hunting for old nails, pennies, and such like. It was dirty work, but they seemed to find great pleasure in it. "Hallo!" cried one of them, as he pricked himself with the darning needle. "Here's a fellow for you." "I'm not a fellow, I'm a young lady," said the darning needle, but no one heard it. The sealing wax had worn off, and she had become quite black. But black makes one look slender and is always becoming. She thought herself finer even than before. "There goes an eggshell sailing along," said the boys, and they stuck the darning needle into the shell. "A lady in black and within white walls," said the darning needle. "That is very striking. Now everyone can see me. I hope I shall not be seasick, for then I shall break." But the fear was needless. She was not seasick, neither did she break. Nothing is so good to prevent seasickness as to have a steel stomach, and to bear in mind that one is something a little more than an ordinary person. My seasickness is all over now. The more genteel and honorable one is, the more one can endure. Crash went the eggshell as a wagon rolled over both of them. It was a wonder that she did not break. "Mercy, what a crushing weight," said the darning needle. "I'm growing seasick. After all, I'm going to break." But she was not sick, and she did not break, though the wagon wheels rolled over her. She lay at full length in the road, and there let her lie.